This week's guest is a man who, after many years of plying his trade in the second tier of English football with the likes of Derby, Sheffield Wednesday and Burnley, was handed his big Premier League break with Stoke City at the ripe old age of 33. Following 2 seasons in the top flight with the Potters, he made another step up to join the mighty Manchester United on a 2-year deal last summer. Lee Grant, welcome to the Goalkeepers Union podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I'm going to refer to this, I think, as a dream yet unexpected switch. Is that a fair evaluation, do you think, of your move?
Yeah, it is. It'd be wrong of me to say that, you know, into my second year at Stoke, I expected to move on to possibly the biggest club in the land. So, yeah, I think you're right in saying it certainly was a dream, and then certainly there was an element of surprise when that first call came in, let's say.
I mean, you've spoken about it a bit already, but you say they're the biggest team in the land. A, what was going through your mind when this all came about? And B, can you give us a quick summary of how the move came about?
Yeah, I can, because it was very short and sweet, really. I mean, I was actually having lunch with a good friend of mine, and funnily enough, we were discussing the next steps because it was coming towards the end of the season, and I've been frustrated at Stoke in the previous season, having had such a great first season, then playing a backup role in the following season. So we're sort of weighing up our options, really, just over some lunch with a friend. Then a call came, and it was my agent. So I picked the phone up, and he said, "Oh, you know, Lee, I've got something for you." All right, okay. And my agent's quite good. He doesn't fill me with fluff or hot air very often. He only rings me if it's something important. So I said, "Okay, what have you got?" So he starts the conversation off with, it's not what you want. It's not quite what you wanted, but I've got a team that want to take you next year. And he said, bear with me. He said, but they want to take you as third choice. So I said, all right, okay. So I'm thinking to myself, third choice. And obviously, the dilemma I've had all that season has been whether I'm happy to be number 2 or, you know, do I move on to go and play and be number 1 somewhere? So I'm thinking, this is a strange phone call. He's asking me to go and be number 3 somewhere. But straight away, my mind goes, well, if it's number 3, then it must be a club that, you know, is a step up, perhaps, from where I am currently. Otherwise, my agent would know I wouldn't consider it. So my next question, quite obviously, was, okay, who is it? And he answers, Manchester United. I said, right, okay. I said, so what's the situation? He said, well, they're very much interested in taking you next season. Jose singled you out as the one they would like for that position next year, and they want to know if you would fancy it. So, having heard that, I dropped my fork. Once I put my jaw back in place, I said to my agent, well, what are you doing on the phone to me? I said, call them back now. I said, hang the phone up now, call them back, and I don't want to hear from you until this is done. And that was it. And obviously these things never go quite as they're meant to. It ended up being a 6-7 week protracted, drawn out thing. But we got there in the end. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was such a nice moment for me to finally get that ink dry and, you know, drive away from Carrington, having knowing that I'm a Manchester United player.
Oh, it must have been an incredible feeling. I mean, I want to go back. I mean, we're going to go here, there, and everywhere in this conversation, but I guess I want to go back a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, where it's quite an inspirational story for me and for so many, where you consider where you were at Derby not so long before that, and it was, I'm guessing, a frustrating time there. And if someone had said, in what we're talking, 3-4 years down the line, you're going to be at Manchester United, my guess is you probably would have thought they were joking.
Yeah, so if you'd asked me that question whilst I was at Derby, it would have just been really difficult to find the path. So how's that going to happen? And it's never a case of I don't believe in myself, or I don't have the confidence, or I don't feel like I'm able to compete at that level. It is simply, well, where's the route? Where's the route from being told a surplus to requirements at Derby to, you know, securing a 2-year contract at Manchester United? It's a difficult one to try and plot that route and plot that path. It's nigh on impossible. So you have to be a little bit creative with your thinking if you're gonna believe and trust in it. And to be honest with you, at times that's what I've had to do throughout the last few years, and especially since Nigel Pearson sat me down in his office at Derby County after coming towards the end of pre-season, and he said to me, Lee, you've done great. You seem like a fantastic lad. Everyone loves you around the place. You're a good pro. And then you're waiting for it, because when you get those things said to you as a player and you're in a manager's office, you're waiting for it. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so what's next? And he says, but I'm taking your squad number off you, and
wow.
It's up to you whether you want to stay or go. And then I was obviously confused as to what had just happened. And he said, you're a great lad, Lee, so if you want to stay, you're more than happy for you to stay, but you're not going to be involved. You're not part of my plans. Okay. So I stood up, I shook his hands, and I said, if it's okay with you, I'll just, have a chat with my family and my agent. And that was the last conversation I had with many of the management at Derby County. And fortunately, not too long after that, I got the call to go to Stoke. So that was the beginning of that journey and the first kind of destination along the path to where I am now, obviously.
It's quite funny, those moves, because you look at whether this would happen anywhere else on the football pitch, and obviously this is the Goalkeepers Union podcast, and we talk about how goalkeepers are a little bit different, but where you've gone from having a squad number taken away from you at a championship club, yet you then thrust into action at a Premier League club. I don't know whether that would happen anywhere else but for a goalkeeper.
No, I think you're probably right. But in a sense, I think what probably done me a favour was the realisation that, I was free to do as I wanted to do. And the call to go to Stoke was as much out of the blue as the call to come to Manchester United. So when I arrived at Stoke, I arrived with such a freedom and such a sense of excitement and joy to be finally at a Premier League club, that it was so easy for me to be able to impress people, not only with my attitude and work ethic and all the rest of it, because you couldn't drag me off the training field, because I just loved being there. It was like, this is unbelievable. I loved everything about it. So it was the fact that I was free in my game and be able to it just freed me up to play to my best abilities and really focus and drive myself on to reach the targets, because I sensed on arriving at Stoke that there was a little bit of an opportunity. Of course, I had Shay Given, they had Jakob Haugaard, who, two fantastic goalkeepers, and Jack was nearing fitness, but I just sensed there was something, where, if I do the right things here, I might get the cup game, and if I get the cup game and I do okay, you never know, I might stay in the team, and that's exactly how it panned out. And from there on in, it was just a really, really exciting, fun, great season, really.
Yeah, well, it's a phenomenal season. I suppose going back a step, then this conversation that you had with Pearson, I wonder, and this is where goalkeeping is different to outfield, and obviously one of the reasons we created this podcast was that one of my beliefs is that the knowledge of goalkeeping as a position for the masses is generally quite low, because of course if you haven't played in goal, it's very difficult to see the intricate details about goalkeeping that make them special. It's very easy to see the great saves and decide that a goalkeeper's fantastic because they make great saves, or see a few mistakes and think they're not so good for making mistakes. So then I suppose in this situation, the fact that he's obviously got a certain opinion, but of course other people in the game that know you have got a very, very different opinion, it comes back to that. Because am I right in thinking, was there anyone in particular at Stoke that played a part? Am I right in thinking, was it Eddie Neveski that obviously knew all about you, knew just how good you were, and knew you were more than good enough to be a Premier League keeper, let alone a Derby County keeper, but a Premier League keeper? Did he play a big role?
It's a really good point you make, Rich, actually, and that's exactly how it happened. So, of course, Nigel Pearson doesn't know me particularly well, and I hold no grudges about that, because that's how the game operates, on opinions. So his decision was made, and that was fine. I accepted that, and we moved on and looked for another opportunity. And obviously, as you rightly said, the assistant manager at Stoke at the time is Eddie Niedzwiecki, who was, let's try and work out how to best describe it. Well, he got me my first opportunity in the game. He got me a trial at Derby County when I was 15 years old. He played a huge part in that. I also played Sunday League with his son from the age of about 13 up to about 15, 16. And so he knew of me from a very, very young age. And also Andy Quire, the goalkeeping coach at Stoke, he's known of me for a long time also because he was an academy coach at Derby County once upon a time. So it's funny how the world works and how small the goalkeeping world can be at times. But those two connections played a huge part in me arriving at Stoke City.
Well, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? Like most of the goalkeepers we feature on the podcast, everyone has an interesting story. Yours is no different. Sometimes it's a checkered story with a few bumps in the road. So, I mean, let's bring it all the way back. Now, we've been told a story from my co-host Richard Lee here with regards to the start of your career.
I know exactly what the story is. I'm cringing as you're about to talk, but
Richard,
I'm going to let him have his moment. Go for it.
Well, look, I'm just gonna paint the picture, and I'm going to allow you to inform everybody exactly what happened. So you were at a club until the age of 15 years old, but they deemed another goalkeeper to be slightly better than you. Is that correct?
It's actually factual. It's 100% factual. And
do you want to name who that is? People who are sat on the edge of their seat at the moment. They don't know who this goalkeeper is.
Not particularly. So I'll paint you the picture. Richard alluded to it. So from about the age of 12, 13, Watford was obviously my hometown club. And for some reason, I always struggled to get in a look in. I couldn't get a foot in the door. I'd had trials. I'd been there in the community sides from sort of 12, 13. Stepped away, just couldn't get a look in. And I found out the reason for that was because they had a very talented young goalkeeper by the name of Richard Lee on their books.
Thank you.
Who they had earmarked as the big prospect for the future. And, they were right in doing so because he went on to make his first team debut and performed excellently for them. So they were correct in their thinking. But what it did for me is it cut off an avenue into my hometown club because there was already somebody that they fancied much more. So it was really difficult for me. It was gutting, and especially to somebody like Richard, who I knew and was totally jealous of. But no, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, let's be honest.
Can I just make the point? I have not paid him to say any of that, okay? There's people in the studio. There's a producer we've got who's shaking his head. He's disgusted by what you just said.
We should also make the point that you are now Manchester United and Richard's in the studio.
I'm in the studio with a broken bicep and everything else going on,
I'll say no more.
Hey ho. But interestingly, you mentioned it. You then did go to Derby County, and I remember, and just a few years later, I'm sat at Vicarage Road as a number 3 or 4 goalkeeper watching you play for Derby against Watford. You found your way through that. In fact, we were in the same squad together, weren't we, as well? England squads, was it under 19s, 20s, whatever it was. So you made your way at Derby very quickly, and you soon established yourself as the number 1.
Yeah, I mean, things have a funny way of working out, as you say, because I arrived at Derby at 15, 16, and it was a Premier League club, finishing 7th in the Premier League, I think. So things were on a really buoyant time for the football club. And I think it was, I'm trying to think of the exact year, but I think maybe 1 or 2 years into my academy stint, the football club got relegated out of the Premier League. So I think I was 18 or 19 at the time, and a really difficult time for the club. I remember senior players having to take pay cuts, players being asked to defer wages, players being sold off. And one of those players that was sold off was Mark Poom. Now, Mark Poom was the cult hero at Derby at the time, probably our best player. And that just left myself and Andy Oakes, the second and third choice, me being the third choice at the time. Unfortunately for me, Andy had his injury issues, and it opened the door for me at 19 years old. So, as you rightly say, I was thrust into the first team limelight, as it were, at a young age, and managed to forge my way into the reckoning,
If we look at your career thereafter, up to where we've already discussed, you came in as a young keeper, and again, this is another example of how fortunes can change so quickly in football, because you were the number 1 choice for those first 2 seasons, and then a young Lee Camp entered the fray, and then all of a sudden you're out of favour, and I believe a succession of injuries, and you've gone from being a first team regular to playing a select amount of games in the space of 3 years or so.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it was really frustrating, difficult time because I didn't really know how to handle it because, as you said, from 19, 20, 21, I'm playing in the first team, I'm a regular, and it was difficult, don't get me wrong, because at that time, the club was struggling financially, we were flirting with relegation in the Championship, so it was tough, but I was loving every moment. I signed a new long-term contract, which I think took me up to 24, so I thought, wow, I've cracked it. But all the while this was happening, there was another young goalkeeper that was only 12 months separates us, and he followed an almost identical path to myself. So England under 16, 17, 18, all the way up to 21. He was doing fantastic in the reserves, and he was kind of in the shadows the whole time. And as soon as I got an injury, or I can't remember the exact circumstances in how I came out of the team. I was either dropped, which is probably the most likely, or I was injured. But either way, Lee was there to step in, and he done fantastic. So you had these two young goalkeepers that are, there's only 12 months separating them, both with international credentials up to the age of sort of under 21s, and it was a strange scenario for me because all of a sudden I'm out of the picture, and it was like, oh, this wasn't how I thought it was going to go. I thought I was going to make the next step from Derby County, but instead I was waiting my turn and frustrated and becoming more frustrated, and actually found it really difficult to handle.
And you ended up going on a short loan spell to Oldham, if I remember rightly, and you did really well there.
Yeah, that was the biggest relief. I mean, that was a real kind of nervy time for me. It was like I was really eager to get out and play, and I was trying to force the issue with the football club, and in the end they let me leave, and I got a phone call to go to Oldham. And I went to Oldham at really short notice, played at the weekend, and had a decent first game, but we lost. I think we lost 1-0, and actually towards the end of that game, the goal they scored, I remember thinking, I should have done so much better with that. I was having a really good game, really steady, and then the goal went in, and I just felt really deflated. Oh no, this is terrible. First game, sloppy goal. And then we went on a run of 5 clean sheets on the spin, which at the time hadn't been done at Oldham since 1970 something, if I remember rightly. So it really ignited something in me, just playing games, keeping clean sheets, and being in that senior environment again where the pressure was on. And actually those 15 games, 16 games, whatever it was, couldn't have gone any better as a whole. And ended up coming back, and it really kind of established me again back on the scene, and led to me joining Sheffield Wednesday. And that was obviously, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my career to go to Sheffield Wednesday, I would say.
I want to touch on that because I know, obviously, even now how people talk about you at Sheffield Wednesday, but also just what you've touched on there, the fact that you got that loan move, you got some games under your belt. We've got goalkeepers of all ages, and in fact, there's quite a few lads at the very top that have reached out to me that I know listen to this podcast. Obvious question, but certainly when you're developing and you're coming through, how important is it to play games? And it sounds like an obvious question, but you see so many of the younger goalkeepers that might be playing under 23s football right now, or not necessarily playing all that much but getting lots of training. How important for you has it been to be the number one, to have that pressure, to have the edge that comes with being a number one?
It's everything, to be honest, Rich. It really is everything, and I can say that because I've seen it from all angles. So I've seen it from a young goalkeeper playing games, playing 80, 90, 100 games for his first club, Derby County, thinking he'd made it, then all of a sudden having to play second fiddle, finding that really difficult, and then having to drop down a division to go and get some more games. But the realisation after leaving Oldham after 15 games was that this is what I want to do, and this is what I need to be doing regardless of where it is or how it happens. So what I mean by that is I decided, having left Oldham and returning to Derby County, that it didn't matter to me where I was going next. It really didn't. It just mattered that I was going and had a strong possibility to play. So when the call came from Sheffield Wednesday and I had an offer from Derby County to stay for another 3 years at the same time, and actually they were being promoted to the Premier League at that time under Billy Davis. So I had a decision to make: go with Derby to the Premier League. It's the club I've been at since I was 16, 15. got a three-year deal off on the table here. I'm going to be on the bench in the Premier League, or I'm going to be at least third choice. I'm going to be in and around it, or go to Sheffield Wednesday and forge my own way and make a career for myself, basically, get some games under my belt, learn my trade. And that's exactly what I chose to do. And I'm so pleased now, as an old goalkeeper sitting here with, as you rightly say, Rich, with bones aching, wrists, knees and everything else. I'm so happy I made that choice, because it's just everything. It's how you learn, it's how you develop, it's how you test yourself. And for me, that's the biggest thing, is how I test myself. How can I really push myself? I can only do that by learning and developing in games against, the best opposition. So that's exactly what I did. And I would urge any goalkeeper to do that. Every goalkeeper to do that. Of course, it's not possible. And I understand that, because I'm doing it now. But if you can, and there's an opportunity, take it. Most definitely. Get out there and play some games.
It's those sliding doors moments as well, isn't it? Well, we had Neil Etheridge on the podcast recently, and he talked about relationships that he's built up with certain goalkeeper coaches. I know he was very close with Ben Roberts and Neil Cutler, and they've helped him restart his career at other clubs. And, you were at Wednesday, you developed a good relationship with Brian Laws. You were there with him, and then he took you to Burnley. So, relationships are so important in football, aren't they?
They are. They're hugely important. And the word I learned was probably the most important thing I learned there was probably trust. And if you can build up trust with a manager over a course of a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, which is what happened with me at Sheffield Wednesday with Brian Laws, you're likely to be able to reap the rewards of that at some stage further on in your career. And that happened for me almost instantaneously, because Brian Laws went to Burnley, and they were a championship club looking to bounce back to the Premier League, and his first thought was, I need a new goalkeeper. Where did he turn? To the goalkeeper that he trusted from his Sheffield Wednesday days. So you're right in saying that. Those relationships are hugely important.
And just got to ask, you played in a few derbies. You played in the Steel City derby, the Nottingham derby, and of course Blackburn versus Burnley, which apparently is the most ferocious of the three. Is that fair?
It's a very ferocious one, yeah. For me, the Nottingham Forest derby one probably has a bit more of a special place because it was my first club. But then, having said that, the Steel City derby, that was a great one. That was a great one. Do you know what? I couldn't pick between any of them. I loved all of them.
You saved a penalty in the Forest derby game, if I remember rightly.
I did, yeah, on my second stint. So it was my first game back against Forest. Sorry, my first sort of derby against them in my second stint at the City Ground. Yeah, I loved it. Great moment. I'm trying to think. Henderson, I think.
Yeah, Darius Henderson, yeah.
Yeah, Beg Darius Henderson, yeah. Low to the right. I don't save many penalties, so I remember it well.
I actually watched that game. The reason I remember it is because I watched that game with a Nottingham Forest fan, and I won't repeat what he called you when you saved that penalty.
I love it. I love getting that stick from the away fans.
Do you enjoy that? Because actually we ask a lot of goalkeepers this, because you're the closest man to the away fans, and Ben Foster told us a few funny stories of fans that have given him a bit of stick. Is it something that you relish, being that close to the fans? Yeah, do
you know what? It's like an interesting relationship you have with it, because it's there all the time. You can't escape it in the same way that a centre midfielder can, for example. But I must admit, one of my favourite moments ever on a football pitch, and that's saying something, one of my favourite moments ever was Chelsea away 2 seasons ago at the Bridge. And it's a really bizarre one. When I tell people this, they go, that doesn't make any sense. But we were 4-2 down or 3-2 down at the time. It was like the Alamo. We were getting peppered, and there was no way we were going to win the game. I think we scored. We made it 4-2, made it more respectable. But I think we scored towards the end. I think it was maybe 4-1 at the time. And the reason why I was enjoying it was because I was playing well, and I was in the zone, and I felt like it didn't matter what happened. I knew that I was playing to my highest, ability. I was really enjoying myself. And I made a save, and I was back in the goal, and I was having a drink out of my bottle just as they were about to take the corner. And I was getting absolute pelters from these fans behind. And they were so aggressive, and their faces were all snarled up, and there was foam coming out of their mouths, and they're screaming at me. And I was drinking my drink, and honestly, I couldn't contain myself. I burst out laughing because for the simple fact that I was just enjoying it so much. And I was thinking to myself as this was happening, there's no other place I'd rather be right now than in the back of this net at Chelsea. And it's quite tight at Chelsea, obviously, at Stamford Bridge. Getting abused from these fans. And they were really going for it. But I think, and then I started laughing, and actually it diffused it straight away. All these guys that were so angry, they saw the fact that I was enjoying it, and they actually just settled down. And it stuck with me forever, that moment, because it was just a bizarre moment to start laughing in the back of the goal. I just couldn't contain myself. I burst out. I nearly spat my water out of my mouth.
See, I don't think there's many people that would enjoy that. Some angry people foaming at the mouth, screaming abuse at you, for that to be such a joyous moment.
But it just seemed, at the time, really out of their reaction and their anger. I mean, they were winning the game, and from the way the game was going, they were going to win the game. Unfortunately for us on that day at Stoke, we were having a bit of a poor afternoon defensively, but where else would I want to be? David Luiz and all these guys. I'm thinking, this is amazing.
That's awesome.
It was a strange one, but one that will stick with me forever, that moment.
You mentioned world-class players there. I'm going to take this back to where we started and Manchester United. I guess first impressions, really, for you, when you first joined the club, and the fact that you jumped straight into action. I mean, you were straight over to the US, in the US tour, playing against Milan, Liverpool. You then later played against Bayern Munich. It was quite a baptism of fire, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, it was really, really interesting because I wasn't sure how it was going to play out. As soon as I signed, the first thing I did was looked into the schedule and looked at the fixtures, and like, as you say, Liverpool, Bayern, Milan, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting. Am I going to be playing in these games? What keepers are coming on tour? And I start looking at the goalkeeper, and I'm thinking, right, okay, so as it stands, I think it's only me and Joel Pereira. Fantastic young goalkeeper and a really nice guy as well, by the way. I think it's only us two coming. So, of course, it's pre-season. I'm going to get a chance to play these games. We're either going to be sharing them or I'm going to be playing half. So, it was really interesting to see those games and have myself being part of those, because, as you said, coming from where I've come from, to see those teams and those names on the paper and think, I'm going to be up against those. It was, a nice moment.
Yeah, I bet it was. Not only that, not just the players you're against. As of recording, we came to the game up at Old Trafford, Matthew and myself, yesterday. Thank you very much for those tickets, Lee. Much appreciated.
You're more than welcome.
But I was sat there, and I used to go to United when I was a kid from time to time. So being sat there and watching you do the warm-up, and you're chatting away to David de Gea, someone who's considered to be certainly in the top 3 in the world. I think in most surveys that come out, they always have David de Gea certainly in the top 3. And you're working alongside him every single day now. Can you at least tell me that he's a bit of a weirdo or an oddball or something?
I can, yeah.
Is
he? No, he's top man, David. He's top man. A lot of time for David. He's been great for me, actually, since I've come to the club. Just a really sound individual. And I think that's what you want when you come to meet these types of guys, and you're working alongside these really elite level players. You want them to be good guys as well, because almost it'd be a bit deflating if they weren't, wouldn't it? But David in particular has been great. I sit next to him in the changing rooms. He's always got something funny to tell me in the mornings. He's always tired. He's got this kind of genius level. Yeah, he's got this genius level about him where he's tired and he doesn't want to train, but then he goes out to train and he's just top drawer and he's fantastic anyway. And you think, how did he do that? He's moaning to me how tired he is 5 minutes ago, and he's just turned it on. But that's David. That is David in a nutshell. Yeah, it's funny.
You said you've learned a lot from them already. What kind of stuff have you taken from them?
I think the most striking thing for me is the calmness that David has, and it's bordering on horizontal at times how relaxed he is. He's such a cool individual, and he manages to take that into the games, and his presence I think has an impact on those around him as well. So his calmness, his assuredness, he manages to emit that really to others, and it has a really positive impact on the team. And I think that's the only way he can play, only way he knows how to train, play, and behave in general, to be honest. He's just a very laid-back guy, very calm.
It is worth noting here as well that you are indeed the senior statesman of the Manchester United goalkeeping team. So do you equally feel as though you can pass on knowledge to them as much as they are to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously we've applied our trades at different levels, all three of us. But what I come and I bring wherever I go is a real desire to work. And I think they perhaps looked at that and found that interesting or different perhaps to how they work, because we certainly do have a different way of working. I think the way I've been brought up, I mean, we're all creatures and sort of products of our environment, and I was sort of brought up with Eric Steele, Mark Poom, and coaches and goalkeepers that work incredibly hard and almost too much at times. And I've almost decided that's the way I wanted to go, and that was what was important for me. And I think the way David and Sergio and the goalkeeper coaches work here is at a slower tempo, it's calmer, it's, I wouldn't say more relaxed because the work has an intensity about it, of course, but it's a very different way of working, and actually it took me a little bit of time to get used to it. But also, I've looked at it and I've attacked it in my way, and I'd like to think that those guys have looked at that and thought, yeah, I like the way he's doing things there as well.
Nice. And you also bring your brand of banter as well.
Yeah, my terrible, horrific, boring banter that also brightens the mood at times. But yeah, no, we have a good laugh. I'm trying to learn a bit of Spanish as well, which is also good for a laugh for those guys in particular. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's been good, and we have a good relationship.
Yeah. You touched on, in fact, you mentioned Eric Steele. We had Eric on the show a few weeks ago, and of course, you and David both had Eric Steele as a goalkeeper coach. I want to touch on, I suppose, well, yourself, David, and Sergio Romero as well, who, by the way, I've only seen bits, but what I've seen, he looks like he's another fantastic goalkeeper as well. What sort of work do you do? This will be more for the younger goalkeeper that's listening in, thinking, how do I improve my spring? How do I improve my kicking, etc.? Is there anything that you do in training that you would suggest for younger goalkeepers coming through that you know you've done, that you've seen, that might be a bit different, that you'd really recommend?
Well, yeah, I mean, anything you can do in terms of extracurricular work, so the work you do away from the pitch, for me, is just as important as the work you're doing on the pitch. So I'm a big believer in it, Rich. I know you were throughout your career. That gym work, that prehab, that stretching, that plyometric work, strength and conditioning, I've always really pride myself on all of that side of it, to give myself the best opportunity to be as good as I can be on the field. So, as you rightly say, how can I be slightly stronger? How can I be more robust aerial challenges? How can I strike the ball perhaps a bit further? How can I improve my spring and my speed in and around the goal mouth? And all of those areas, of course, they come with practice and with training on the grass. And that stuff is hugely important and probably the most important. But if you can supplement that with the things you're doing away from the pitch, your lifestyle choices included, that for me is massive. And that is what I would say to any young goalkeeper. If you are committed to improving yourself totally, the whole individual, so top to bottom, physically, mentally, away from the pitch, on the pitch, if you can do that, then yeah, you've got a chance, that's for sure.
Lee, we'd just like to touch on the transition that Manchester United have had in the past couple of months. Firstly, Jose Mourinho obviously was responsible for bringing you into the club and has since departed. Yeah. Did you speak at all with Jose during the time that he was about to leave or since he's departed?
I haven't spoken since. I've had a hugely busy, packed schedule over the last few weeks, but of course I'm going to give him a call. And of course, I also think it's respectful to let the dust settle and then perhaps give him a call. Because actually in my time at the football club, I always try to take people as I find them anyway, but Jose was fantastic with me. And of course, I'm always going to have a soft spot for him anyway, because he was the manager responsible for bringing me to the football club. But on a personal level, I thought, yeah, fantastic guy. He had some really nice words for me just after I'd signed, and he always took the time out to greet me, every day. And I just thought he was a very respectful guy, and obviously for somebody who's achieved what he has done at all levels of the game, to be that respectful and that kind to somebody such as myself, I took it. I thought a lot of him for that. So it's on my to-do list to make sure I give him a call in the next week or so.
We get a lot of players who say that Jose Mourinho is one of the best coaches they've ever worked with. Asmir Begovic was on the podcast and said that Jose Mourinho, in the short time they were together at Chelsea, he was one of the best managers he's worked with. Conversely, some others perhaps don't get on as well with Jose Mourinho. Can you put your finger on why it didn't quite work out at United?
That's a hugely difficult question to answer, because, as you rightly said, he has so much football knowledge, it's incredible, and the level of depth he's willing to go into to prepare for a game is incredible. Also, his understanding of the game and what he wants from the game, they're very clear. He has clear objectives for his players, and I think most players enjoy that. They like that. They like to know what they want. Of course, personalities is a huge issue within the game, and it's difficult for big personalities to come together at times, and that's something I've realised over the course of the last few years, and I think that may have had an impact on the outcome for our football club in the last few weeks in terms of the change in manager and the change in staff. But in terms of Jose and his abilities, they're second to none. And I think his record speaks to that anyway. I think it's fairly obvious. You don't win Champions Leagues and leagues in every corner of the globe unless you have an incredible understanding of the game.
And of course, another big change, legend coming back to United, and certainly being in the crowd. They were singing his name for most of the game, but what an incredible month that he's had, and you guys have had 7 wins on the trot. Has he done anything hugely different? What's changed? Well,
he has done things differently. So it'd be wrong of me to say that he's come in and he's just had a smile on his face and he's just been, this fantastic, bright personality, which of course he is. He has come in, and straight away you can tell that there's a certain element of steel about him. Of course, everybody has him down as this club legend who is firstly a great guy and wonderful person, top player, all the rest of it. But there's an element of steel, and there's something behind there. There's a bit of fire behind there that can come out at particular moments. We've already seen glimpses of it when we've not played so well. But he's come in. I think the way he wants to play, he wants the team to play with freedom and a real attacking intent. And the lads have really taken to it. Of course, you can see that in the results. And they're enjoying it. People are enjoying it at the moment. And of course, he has the added benefit of that new manager bounce. And long may that continue from our perspective. We want that to continue right up until the end of the season to see where it can take us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the difference from watching when you see on TV United games at the moment that, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the managerial unit are more as one as well. You kind of see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there, and Mike Phelan and Kieran McKenna and Michael Carrick are actually all on the sidelines together, celebrating together, rather than being one man and a few behind.
It's a very interesting observation, because it's not something I've taken a lot of time to observe myself, to be honest. But yes, what Ole has done tremendously well since he's come in is he has united the football club. And I think he does that simply by being himself, because he comes in and straight away everybody wants him to do well because of who he is, his past connections with the football club, and the way he is as an individual. So he has support from top to bottom of the football club. Now, that's not to say that that wasn't the case previously, but when you have that kind of warmth, people want to do well for you, and I think certainly the boss currently has that, and that's certainly the case for Michael Carrick, Kieran McKenna, who are young coaches, who are really plying their trade and learning the game as well. But also they've been given huge responsibilities under this management as well, which is great for them. So of course they are going to celebrate, as you rightly say, and be involved and really, really want to do well for this manager because, they've got a high level of responsibility within this managerial setup.
And one of those players who is doing well is Paul Pogba. Penalties. Paul Pogba penalties. Now, you could actually hear on the highlights yesterday, there was a laugh in the crowd as there was the moments. Did you hear it?
I did, yeah. I didn't know I wasn't quite sure what was going on actually, because as he was running up, because the run up takes that long, there's time for things to happen. You can check your watch, you can write a text, you can listen to your voicemails, you do whatever you need to do because it's that long between him taking the run up and hitting the penalty. It was bizarre. There was this noise that came around, and I was wondering whether it was something that was orchestrated, that was sort of pre-organised by the fans. That next time Paul takes a penalty, we're going to make this noise. It was really strange, but I mean, it's lovely to see those penalties go in when he takes them. It makes it much more nerve-wracking, I think, for everybody in the stand and everybody sat watching.
So does he do it in training? Do you face those penalties in training?
Of course he does. Of course he does. Of course he does. I love it. I mean, I've spent quite a few afternoons with Paul outside after training when people have gone in, and I often chuck a ball to him and say, right, 5, best of 5, let's have it. And he loves it. He loves practicing that way. He doesn't do it and it's for show. He does it. He practices that way. He wants to take his penalties that way, and he has the ability to go either way, high, low, down the middle, and he also has the ability to make the decision incredibly late, which for a goalkeeper is so frustrating. But we also get a chance to save a few every now and again. Not too many, but there's been a couple of occasions where I've had him in my back pocket.
Has he said why he's decided to do that? Is it purely just to put off the keeper? Has he said why he's adopted that technique?
According to him, he's always done it. So even back to he said something about when he took in the Youth Cup for Manchester United years and years and years ago, and he said he took it in the same fashion. Now, I don't know whether that's factual or not, but that's what he said. I've taken him as a man of his word, and I think he just enjoys the theatre of it. Definitely, that's Paul all over, and also he enjoys being different. And I think finally he has the ability to, as I said, make that decision as late as possible, and he thinks that's the best way of doing it. So credit to him, but he scored a lot of goals this season doing it. So until such a time as when it's not working for him, then I think he should carry on doing it.
He has scored the goals. He's also followed them up with that celebration. You said he enjoys the theatre of it. I guess, how much of a character is he now for Manchester United, both on the training ground, on the pitch? And do you think that, obviously, he had the captaincy taken away from him this season, do you think that he can regain that and be a future Manchester United captain?
I think it matters not whether Paul's a Manchester United captain or not, in my opinion. And I think for Paul, for him personally, I wouldn't like to speak for him, but I don't see it affecting his performances either what way, whether he has an armband or not. And I think he's determined to act in such a fashion on and off the field for Manchester United that, as a leader, I think he wants to be a leader. He's comfortable with people looking to him and looking at his performances and feeding off his performances. I think that's where he's best, because he is, as you said, he's a huge character for us on and off the pitch. He's actually a really integral part of the changing room. people forget he's a very intelligent guy. This is a guy that speaks English fluently, speaks French fluently, speaks Spanish fluently, speaks some Italian. So this is a very intelligent guy who can act as a conductor for the changing room simply by, the languages he speaks, but also because of his personality. He's the type of person that brings people together. He's always dancing in the middle of the changing room after training. He's got some new move. He's got a new song on that he wants everybody to hear and show his dance moves to. So he's a really colourful, interesting character and a hugely important member of the squad on and off the field. But of course, at this moment in time, on the field, more importantly.
Yeah, brilliant. Last couple of questions. First one is young goalkeepers. Got a lot of young goalkeepers that listen to the show. What advice would you give to a young, budding goalkeeper looking to make his way in the game, or her way in the game?
What advice would I give? Oh, well, definitely, we'll go back to one of the questions you said earlier. Definitely play as many games as you can. Don't be content to sit and wait, because I do see that maybe more so now because of the way the system's structured in terms of the development squads and under 23s. You see goalkeepers and you see players hanging around perhaps maybe a year or two longer than they should. If you've got an opportunity to go and play, go and play. If that's in the league, if that's in the conference, if that's in wherever that may be, if you can get out and play and you're in that shop window, that's how I look at it. I feel like that's a huge bonus. And then just be consistent. And when I don't mean consistent on the field, I mean consistent in your behaviours. That's a huge thing for me as well. And I've realised that that's something that managers, coaches, and football clubs as a whole they really look for in any player in any position, but goalkeepers in particular. If you can be consistent in your habits, in your behaviours, I think that has a really positive impact on what you do on the field and hopefully leads to a greater level of consistency in your performances.
Oh, good stuff. And this last question, this may dictate whether we remain friends after this conversation. You may or may not remember, we played against each other. In fact, it was only my fourth ever game as a professional at Vicarage Road, Derby County versus Watford. I won't say the scoreline, but anyway, after the game, game, we exchanged shirts, and I let Matt know before this interview that I have your shirt proudly hung on the wall, mounted, framed. Can I assume that you did the same with my shirt?
Well, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, please.
The answer is no. I have your shirt in the loft, along with...
In the loft?
Yes, along with Brad Friedel's, Mike Taylor's.
Oh, you're in good company.
No, not David James, actually. David James are the only ones who wouldn't give me a shirt. I've got about 30, 40 goalkeepers and their shirts all stuffed in a big brown box in my loft.
Do you have any framed?
There's only 3 shirts that have made it into a frame.
Go on.
One is my Premier League debut.
Okay, that's fine.
Another is a Team Sky, randomly Team Sky cycling jersey.
What?
Excuse me?
Okay.
Yeah, correct. I have no idea why. I'm not even a fan of cycling, so I don't know how that ended up in a frame.
Okay.
And the third one is a Robin Van Persie signed shirt, who signed one to my son personally. It was a shirt that he wore and scored in one of the World Cup qualifiers. So they're the only 3 shirts that made it into a frame out of my collection.
So
that's a fair point.
So can we just clarify here that of all the goalkeeping shirts that you've been handed over the years, the only one you've got framed in your house is yours?
It's mine, yeah, correct.
Brilliant.
And I haven't got a David de Gea shirt yet, so that I need to get one of those. I'm sure I must have got some good ones.
Why didn't David James give you a shirt?
Do you know what? That's another good story.
Because he would have and that's another thing, I know this, he was your hero, right?
David James was one of my biggest heroes growing up because, he played for Watford and I just loved the way he used to play the game. And huge character, but didn't know the guy. Didn't actually get a chance to play against him until... no, in fact, I'm not sure I ever got to play against him. I was on the bench. He was playing for Bristol City. I was at Burnley, and it was right at the start of my Burnley career. Before I think it was one of the first games of the season, so I wasn't playing. And I asked for a shirt after the game, and he said, "Oh, I'll ask the kit man." and see if I can get you one. And he never did. He never came back to me, and I was wounded. I was gutted, and it's actually like it's scarred me for life. That has. I can never think of David James in the same way.
Well, maybe he's listening. Maybe he's listening, and maybe he'll right that wrong.
Maybe he'll send me one. You never know. You never know. If he's listening, David, please send me one, and I'll promise I'll frame it along with my Richard Lee one.
Thank you. There we go. We're friends.
Lee, on that wonderfully sorrowful note, we will end this chat. It's been nothing but a pleasure. Lee Grant, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.